Hi, my name is Michael and I'm the co-founder of bucketAV. In this video I show you how you can install bucketAV for this specific scenario. So first we will set up real-time scanning and we will test this with a EICAR test file. After that we will configure a weekly scheduled scan for Bucket, as well as we will add reporting capabilities. Last but not least, we check out the dashboard to see what's going on in the system. So let's get started. There's one requirement that needs to be fulfilled before you can start installing bucketAV, and that is you need an EC2 key pair. So let me quickly show you where you can find if you already have a key pair or if you need to create one. So I go to the EC2 console, and there you can find a link to the key pairs in the navigation bar. So I click on that, and as you can see, for me this is a blank page. Make sure that you are in the region that you want to use at the end. So I'm in the North Virginia region, so that's the correct region for me. But if you don't see anything, double check the region. So now you have basically two options. You can create a key pair or you can import an existing key pair. So this is needed for the SSH connection at the end. So in my case, I will create a new key pair, and basically the settings here don't matter too much from the perspective of bucketAV, so choose whatever your organization requires. So I create a key pair here now, and then it downloads the key to my local machine. So make sure that you don't lose this file, because this is what you need to access the machine if you want to access it over SSH. So that's it, the precondition is fulfilled. We can now continue to install bucketAV over the AWS Marketplace. So I will open up the AWS Marketplace, and you will find the link in the video description as well as in our installation guide. So once you are here, there is basically one thing to do. You have to click on the continue to subscribe button, and this will initiate the AWS Marketplace flow to subscribe to the product. So you have to accept the terms. So we use the default AWS Marketplace terms, so it's nothing custom here. So we use the defaults, and then the subscription is created, and this might take a couple of seconds or minutes depending on how AWS Marketplace is doing today. All right, the subscription is now completed, and you can continue with the installation process. So click on the continue to configuration button at the top, and then you will get or you have to select between different fulfillment options. So we recommend that you deploy bucketAV into a dedicated public VPC. So that's a VPC that we set up for you that has access to the public internet. So this is the most cost optimized and most performance optimized way of deploying bucketAV. You can also deploy bucketAV into a dedicated private VPC. So this is again a VPC that we create for you, but this time the instances, the EC2 instances that scan the files, don't have public IP addresses. So they use different ways to access, for example, AWS APIs. So they don't use the internet gateway, they go through a NAT gateway, for example, or specific S3 endpoints. So the third option that you have is you can use an existing VPC. So this is a VPC that you already created and that you want to use to run bucketAV in. There are a couple of preconditions if you choose this option. So check out our networking guide if you want to deploy bucketAV into an existing bucket to ensure that all the endpoints are reachable that are required by bucketAV. So what I will do, I will go with the recommended option, and I have to select the software version, and we recommend to just go with the default, that's the latest version. And then you can also select the region that you want to deploy bucketAV into. And it's important to understand that if your buckets are, for example, located in North Virginia, bucketAV must also be installed in North Virginia. So this is very important. So bucketAV needs to be installed at the same location than your S3 buckets. So everything looks fine here. So I continue to launch. And now again, we have a couple of options here, but you want to choose launch CloudFormation. So that's the most common option. And this will provide you the launch link, and this will then open up AWS CloudFormation. So this is the infrastructure as code service by AWS that we use to provision our product into your AWS account. So what you have to do is here you click on next. So everything is pre-populated by AWS Marketplace. So that looks great. And now you can enter the details. So first we have to set the stack name, and we recommend that you name the stack bucketAV. All right, in the next step, you have to select the key pair, And in this case, remember, I just created this in the precondition step. So I select the bucketAV key. Your key likely is named differently. All right. And those are the only required parameters that you have to set. All the rest is filled with defaults for you. So you can review them and you can change them if you wish. But if you just scroll to the bottom, you can click on next and everything will work. So I will do that now. And again, I have to scroll down to the bottom, click on next. And one last time, scroll down to the bottom. This time, don't forget to check this. I acknowledge that AWS CloudFormation might create IAM resources check. And then finally, I click the submit button. And this now launches the CloudFormation stack for me. And this will take a couple of minutes. So we create infrastructure for you, EC2 instances, SQS queues, IAM roles, security groups, VPC configuration. So everything will now be created by AWS CloudFormation. So wait a couple of minutes until the status changed to create complete, and then we can continue here. All right, it took around 8 minutes to create the stack, but as you can see, the stack status is now create complete, which means everything installed and was provisioned successfully. So we can go on and connect our first S3 bucket with bucketAV. So let's switch into the S3 console. And I already selected a bucket here. So that's my demo bucket. And what I do now is I will create a connection between this bucket and bucketAV. So I click on the properties tab here. And then you have to scroll down a little bit until you find the event notification section. And here you go and create event notification. And I name this bucketAV once again. I don't specify any prefix or suffix filters, and you want to send all object create events to bucketAV. So I will go with that setting and then scroll down again. And as the destination, you select an SQS queue. And then you have to be careful to select the scan queue, not the dead letter queue. So that's very important. So I select the scan queue, the bucketAV scan queue, and I click on Save Changes. And now my bucket is kind of ready for real-time scanning. So what I'm going to do now is I will show you how it works by uploading a clean as well as an infected file. So I do this by opening Cloud Shell. So this is a capability of the AWS console. And the first command that I enter will copy a clean file from one of our buckets that we use for demo purposes to the S3 bucket that you just saw. All right, so this file was successfully uploaded, and I will do the same thing with a EICAR test file. So this is a standard test file for antivirus solutions that is detected by all the antivirus solutions as a virus. So let me copy that into the bucket as well. All right, so this finished as well. So what I'm going to do is I will switch back to the S3 bucket and we will see what happened. So I click on objects here and I reload the list of the objects, and what you can see is there's only one file in the bucket. And this is actually a good sign because what happened is that bucketAV deleted the infected file automatically, so you can't see it here anymore. But let's check what happened to the clean file. So I will open this up and then I scroll down a little bit to see the tags that are applied. And as you can see, bucketAV added a tag with the value clean to this file. This means that the file was scanned and it is clean. So this is all default behavior, and you can change all of that. So first you can change the tagging scheme. You can also change if files are deleted or not. So for example, we also support things like moving infected files away or moving clean files away. If you're interested in things like that, check out the video description and there are links in there to configure that as well. We are going to add another capability to our installation. We will have we will add a scheduled scan of the whole bucket. So once in a while, we want to scan the whole bucket, all the files in the bucket. So let's see how that works. And what I'm going to do is I will install what we call an add-on. So what I do is I click on the install add-on button. And you are now already familiar with how this works because it opens up the CloudFormation screen. And it already pre-fills most of the parameters. So it already sets a stack name, for example. So feel free to change that if you wish. So that's what we recommend. And then we have to fill in the required parameters. So the first one, and that's the most important one, is the name of the main bucketAV stack. And we named that bucketAV in the previous step, so I will set this here as well. And you also can now supply the names of the buckets that will be scanned. So you can either select a single bucket. So for example, I could select my my demo bucket. It was called bucketAV demo use east 1. You can also use the wildcard character, so this will scan all the buckets in your AWS account in the same region than the stack. So in this case, use east 1. So I will go with the wildcard character because that's just the easiest one. So the next is like optional parameters. So you can select, for example, how often will this happen, and I will go with 1 day here. That's the default. So that's fine. So check out the documentation to see what all those parameters actually mean. But in our case, we finally acknowledge again the CloudFormation creates IAM resources, and we click create stack. And this will spin up again a couple of AWS resources that ensure that once a day, in our case, all the files in the bucket will be scanned by bucketAV. All right, so while this is running, we can already jump on to the next capability, and this is we add reporting. And this is as well an add-on. So you're already familiar with how that works. So I click the install add-on here, and then the CloudFormation UI shows up. The stack name is again pre-populated, and you have to enter the main bucketAV stack. So in our case, that's bucketAV. And now you can also enter the email addresses of the people that want to receive the report. So in my case, I will enter my email address here, and that's it. So sorry for the typo. Okay, that's it. Those are all the required parameters. You have again see a bunch of optional stuff. So the most important one is the frequency. By default, we set it to weekly. So once a week, you will receive the report, but you can change that if you wish. This also includes by default all the buckets that are scanned by bucketAV, so you don't have to configure anything here if you don't need to. So I click create stack, and now this spins up the reporting add-on, and this will also take usually a couple of minutes to be created. Each receiver that you configured will receive a subscription confirmation email that they have to confirm by clicking on the link in the email, otherwise they will not receive any reports. And then, for example, every week you will receive an email like this that contains the report. It starts with some metadata about the region, the account, and so on. It gives you a quick overview, how many files were scanned, and then how many of those files were clean, infected, or where we couldn't scan the file because of, for example, permission errors or encryption errors. Then you get the top 10 infections, so those are the most common malwares or viruses that were found. You also get an overview over your top 10 buckets. And last but not least, you get links to CSV files. And we provide 2 files for you, and keep in mind those files are stored in your AWS account, so it's nothing that we store on our side. And the first report contains infected and unscannable files only. So this is to reduce the size of the report. And the second report contains all the files that were scanned. So it contains the bucket name, the name of the file, version ID if it's a version file. It also contains the status, so if it's clean or infected, and so on and so forth. So those are files that you can then use in your systems to analyze and do whatever you wish with them. So one last thing that I want to show you is the dashboard that we roll out for you as well. So I will open the CloudWatch UI, and I click on dashboards on the left, and here you see your bucketAV dashboards. And I have 2 installations, one in Ireland and this one in North Virginia. So I have to ensure that I click on the right one here. So I click on the US East 1 dashboard. And here you get an overview over how bucketAV is doing. So for example, what you can already see is that 2 files were scanned so far, and that's exactly what I uploaded. And one of those files was clean and the other one was infected. You also see how your scan queue looks like. So usually this is important to understand the scalability concerns of your workload. So if the scan queue grows and grows and grows, then you likely need to increase the number of EC2 instances that bucketAV is allowed to launch. In the next tile of the dashboard, you see how many instances are running over time. This is most important for workloads where autoscaling really happens, so where number of files that are arriving change over time, for example. So maybe there are less files during night than during day, or the other way around. And one very common pattern that we see is that when our customers trigger the weekly scan or the daily scan, we have spikes in the workload, and then we scale up the solution. Once the scan is done, we scale down to what is needed to have the real-time scanning working. You also see the infrastructure alarms tile. So this is where we aggregate all the CloudWatch alarms that we create for you. Those alarms are designed to notify you when things are not working as expected. And then the first step is basically to jump into the dashboard to get an overview of what's going on. In the next tile, you get logs of the system. So this is where you can see that 2 files are actually scanned, and you also see the result of the scan and a couple of other metadata. You also get system logs. So this is most important only if things go wrong, which doesn't happen when you use the public or the private VPC fulfillment option, but if you deploy it into your own VPC, so this is where you could see, for example, network issues. And last but not least, you get an overview of the utilization, network and the CPU, memory, disk utilization of your scan fleet. So that's it. So this is basically now you are done with installing bucketAV, and you can use it. And there are many more use cases you can cover with bucketAV. So if you're interested in something else, then check out the video description. So we have a couple of links there for you to follow if you are interested in additional features and other use cases. So thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, reach out to us. Details again in the video description. Thank you. Bye.